For 500 years, history told us that King Henry VIII slept in glory. We were told he rested in a vault befitting the most powerful monarch England had ever known. We were told wrong. When the stone floor of St. George's Chapel was finally breached, the light didn't reveal a royal sanctuary. It revealed a disaster. The vault was a scene of violence and chaos. The king's coffin wasn't just damaged, it was shattered. And amidst the debris of lead and timber lay a forensic puzzle that defied explanation. A body that had exploded from within, a mysterious stain on the floor, and a fourth skeleton that history had completely forgotten. This is the story of the king who wanted to be a god, but ended up as a gruesome mystery. To understand the horror found inside the tomb, we must first understand the creature Henry VIII had become in his final days. By 1547, the Golden Prince of the Renaissance had decayed into a biological nightmare. Court records painted grim picture of a man suffering from catastrophic metabolic collapse. He was immobilized by his own mass, requiring mechanical hoists just to move him from his bed. His legs were riddled with ulcerated wounds that refused to heal, injuries that likely turned septic. Witnesses reported that the stench of necrotic flesh was so overpowering it filled the royal chambers before the king even entered the room. When Henry finally drew his last breath, the royal embalmers were handed an impossible task. They were accustomed to preserving bodies with spices, oils, and wax, but Henry's corpse was already in a state of advanced decomposition before he died. They did what they could. They encased him in a colossal coffin lined with thick sheets of lead, designed to seal in the fluids and the smell. But in doing so, they inadvertently created a pressure cooker. As the king's body broke down, gases began to build inside the sealed lead shell. The pressure mounted. The first warning sign appeared during the funeral procession from London to Windsor. The cortege stopped for the night at Sion Abbey. In the silence of the church, something terrifying occurred. Attendants reported a dark, viscous fluid seeping from the seams of the coffin, pooling onto the abbey floor. It was a grotesque omen. The lead seal was failing. But the procession moved on, and the king was lowered into a temporary vault beneath St. George's Chapel. It was supposed to be a short stay. It became an eternity. Henry never intended to rest in a hole in the ground. For decades, he had been obsessed with building the megatomb, a monument of black marble and gilded bronze that would dwarf every other royal grave in Europe. He had even stolen the unfinished sarcophagus of his disgraced advisor, Cardinal Wolsey, planning to repurpose it for himself. He hired Italian masters, he cast bronze angels, he poured the treasury into his ego. But hubris has a price. Henry died before the work was finished. His children, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth, had no interest in funding their father's vanity project. They sold off the bronze. They melted down the statues. The grandest tomb in English history was sold for scrap. And Henry? He was left behind, forgotten in the temporary vault he was meant to occupy for only a few weeks. No marker was placed, no stone was carved. As generations passed, the location of the most famous king in history simply vanished. The vault sat in silence for a century. Then, in 1649, the darkness was disturbed. King Charles I had been executed by Parliament. The new regime needed to bury him quickly, quietly, and somewhere no one would worship him. They chose Windsor. In a rushed, panic-stricken operation, workmen pried up the chapel floor and rediscovered Henry's forgotten vault. It was a tight fit. The workmen, struggling with the heavy lead coffin of the executed king, forced Charles I into the chamber. In the chaos, they shoved the existing coffins aside. There was no reverence here, only political necessity. Charles was deposited next to Henry, and the vault was sealed once more. The rough handling of that night likely weakened the already stressed structure of Henry's coffin. The vault went dark again, holding 2 kings and a queen in an uneasy truce. The truth remained buried until 1813. Workmen digging a passage to a new royal crypt accidentally breached the wall of the old vault. A hole opened in the darkness. When the dust settled, the Prince Regent ordered a formal investigation. Sir Henry Halford, the royal physician, descended into the gloom with a lantern. What he saw stopped him cold. On the left, the coffin of Charles I was intact. On the right, Queen Jane Seymour lay in peace, her coffin perfect. But in the center, Henry VIII's resting place was a scene of devastation. The massive lead coffin had not just cracked, it had been blown open. The wooden outer casing was smashed to splinters. The lead had been torn apart by sheer internal force, curled back like paper. Halford peered closer. The damage told a horrific story. The pressure of the gases, the same forces that had caused the leakage at Sion Abbey centuries earlier, had eventually become too great. The coffin had exploded. Exposed to the open air was a massive skeletal leg bone, forced out through the torn lead. Beside it, on the floor of the vault, lay tiny finger bones, scattered like debris. And there was something else. A dark, hardened substance stained the stone floor beneath the rupture. It matched the descriptions of the fluid seen at Sion Abbey. The king's body had not just failed in life, it had violently rejected its confinement in death. The exploded coffin was shocking enough, but as the surveyors cataloged the wreckage, they found an anomaly that no historian could explain. Within the cramped chamber, mixed among the debris, was a collection of bones that did not belong to Henry, Jane, or Charles. There were no records of a 4th burial, no nameplate, no casket, just a loose assortment of human remains hidden in the shadow of the kings. Who was this? Some theories suggest it was a nameless monk, disturbed from an older grave during the chapel's construction and tossed into the royal vault by careless workmen. Others whisper of a darker possibility, a secret burial, someone hidden away during the political purges, slipped into the only place authorities would never look, the sealed tomb of a tyrant. The vault was resealed shortly after the 1813 survey. The stone was replaced, and the floor of St. George's Chapel was made whole. Today, tourists walk over the spot, unaware of the carnage that lies just a few feet beneath their shoes. Henry VIII spent his life trying to project an image of absolute perfection and control. He reshaped the church, the laws, and the map of Europe to suit his will. He designed a tomb meant to freeze that power and time forever. But physics and biology have no respect for crowns. In the end, the king who wanted to be eternal is just shattered lead and scattered bone, lying in the dark beside a stranger whose name history will never know.